There is one betrayal so devastating that no fortress can stop it, no army can prevent it, no crown can survive it, because it doesn't come from an enemy, it comes from your own blood. History remembers King David as the giant slayer, the warrior king, the man who united a fractured nation into one of the greatest kingdoms of the ancient world. But that isn't the darkest chapter of his story. The darkest chapter began after every battle had already been won, when the greatest threat to Israel was no longer outside the city walls. It was eating at the king's own table. His own son, a prince admired for his beauty, charisma, and impossible ambition, spent years quietly convincing an entire nation that its king no longer deserved to rule. No swords, no assassins, no battlefield, just smiles, handshakes, promises, and a carefully planned theft of an entire kingdom. Then one morning, the people woke up and discovered that Israel had two kings. One would keep the throne. The other would become one of history's most tragic symbols of ambition. But before a kingdom collapsed, a family had already fallen apart. At first glance, David's kingdom looked invincible. Israel had never been stronger. Its enemies had been defeated. Trade flourished. The borders expanded. Jerusalem had become both the political heart and the spiritual soul of an emerging nation. For ordinary people, life seemed secure. Their king was celebrated across the region. The shepherd boy who once defeated Goliath had become the ruler every nation respected. David wasn't simply a king. He was a legend while still alive. Songs had been written about his victories. Generals admired him. Foreign rulers feared him. The people believed God himself had chosen him. From the outside, everything appeared perfect. But history has a cruel habit. Sometimes, empires begin collapsing at the exact moment they appear strongest. Palace filled with silent tension. Power creates comfort. Comfort creates distance. And distance allows secrets to grow. David's greatest victories had happened on battlefields. His greatest failures would happen inside his own home. Behind magnificent palace walls, a different war had already begun. Not with swords, but with silence. David's family wasn't simply large. It was politically explosive. Like many kings of the ancient Near East, he had multiple wives and numerous children. Each branch of the royal household carried its own ambitions, its own loyalties, its own rivalries. Every prince understood one thing. Only one man could inherit the throne, and no clear succession plan had been publicly established. In kingdoms, uncertainty is dangerous. Inside royal families can become deadly. Before Absalom ever dreamed of taking his father's crown, something happened inside David's family that shattered its foundation. It involved two of David's children, Amnon, the king's eldest son, and Tamar, Absalom's full sister. According to the biblical account, Amnon became obsessed with Tamar. With the help of his cousin Jonadab, he deceived her into entering his private quarters under the pretense of caring for him while he was ill. Once she was alone, he assaulted her. It was not simply a personal tragedy. It became a royal scandal, an act of violence committed inside the king's own household. Tamar left devastated, her royal garments torn, ash placed upon her head as a public sign of mourning. Absalom found her soon afterwards. He told his sister to remain silent for the moment, and brought her into his own household. But beneath his calm words, something darker had already taken root. Hatred, patient, cold, and calculating. When David learned what had happened, he was furious. Scripture tells us he burned with anger. But then, nothing. No public trial. No punishment. No removal of Amnon as heir. No justice for Tamar. The king who had defeated giants could not confront the giant growing inside his own family. Why? Historians and biblical scholars have debated this for centuries. Some suggest David's own moral failures left him reluctant to judge harshly. Others argue palace politics made decisive action difficult. Whatever the reason, to Absalom, silence looked exactly like weakness. In that moment, a son stopped believing in his father, and a prince quietly began imagining a different king. Most people expect revenge to be loud, immediate, explosive. Absalom chose something far more dangerous. He chose patience. For 2 full years, he said almost nothing. No public outrage, no challenge to the king, no confrontation with Amnon. To the palace, it looked as though the prince had accepted what had happened. But silence is often the favorite weapon of those planning something irreversible. Every smile concealed resentment. Every polite greeting masked a growing storm. David may have believed the crisis had passed. It hadn't. It was only waiting for the perfect moment. The feast that became an execution. In the ancient world, sheep shearing was more than farm work. It was celebration, a time for feasting, music, and lowered defenses. Absalom organized one of these celebrations at Baal Hazor. Then he invited every one of the king's sons, including Amnon. At first, David refused. Perhaps he sensed something wasn't right. Perhaps a father's instincts briefly pierced the political fog. Absalom persisted, not aggressively, patiently, respectfully. Eventually, David agreed, and unknowingly sent his eldest son into a carefully prepared trap. As the celebration reached its height, wine flowed freely, laughter filled the air. Then Absalom quietly gave the order. His servants rushed forward. Amnon never saw it coming. He was struck down in the middle of the celebration. The heir to Israel's throne was dead. The remaining princes fled in terror. Dust rose behind galloping horses. Before anyone reached Jerusalem, rumors traveled even faster. Some claimed all of David's sons had been murdered. Others whispered that a full-scale rebellion had already begun. When the first report reached David, the king collapsed in grief. He believed every one of his sons was dead. Only later did another messenger arrive with the truth. Amnon alone had been killed, but the damage was already done. The royal family had crossed a line from which there would be no return. After killing Amnon, Absalom fled, not to a neighboring village, not to a military outpost. He escaped to Geshur, the kingdom of his maternal grandfather. There, he remained in exile for 3 years. Imagine the irony. The prince who believed he had delivered justice now lived as a fugitive, separated from Jerusalem, separated from power, separated from his father. David mourned Amnon. Yet scripture also tells us that, over time, he longed to see Absalom again. The king's heart was divided. One son was dead. The other was in exile. He had lost both. Joab seized the kingdom cracking. While David wrestled with grief, one man looked beyond emotion. Joab, commander of Israel's army, a brilliant soldier, a ruthless strategist. He understood something David refused to face. This was no longer only a family tragedy. It had become a political crisis. Every year Absalom remained in exile, the uncertainty surrounding the succession grew. Power hates a vacuum. Sooner or later, someone would fill it. Joab decided to act. Instead of confronting David directly, Joab devised a story. He recruited a wise woman from Tekoa. She appeared before the king pretending to seek justice. She described 2 sons. One had killed the other. Now the surviving son faced execution. If that happened, her family line would disappear forever. David listened carefully. Moved by compassion, he promised protection for the surviving son. Only then did the woman reveal the trap. Her message was unmistakable. If you can show mercy in my story, why not show mercy in your own? David immediately realized Joab was behind the plan. Yet the strategy had worked. The king finally ordered Absalom's return to Jerusalem. The exile was over, but the reconciliation never happened. David allowed Absalom back into Jerusalem, yet refused to see him. For 2 more years, father and son lived in the same city, separated by only a few streets. Yet they never met face to face. The silence that had once destroyed one relationship now poisoned another. Absalom waited. Nothing changed. No forgiveness. No restoration. No public recognition. The prince who believed the throne should have been within reach found himself politically invisible. To a man as ambitious as Absalom, that may have felt worse than exile itself, setting the fields on fire. Eventually, Absalom needed Joab's attention. He sent messengers. Joab ignored them. He sent more. Still nothing. Then Absalom chose a language impossible to ignore. Fire. Joab arrived furious. "Why have your servants burned my field?" Absalom's answer revealed his frustration. "What was the point of bringing me back if the king still refuses to see me?" At last, Joab arranged the meeting. David finally received his son. The king kissed Absalom. From the outside, it looked like reconciliation, but appearances can deceive. Sometimes, the most dangerous conflicts are the ones people believe have already ended. The kingdom thought peace had been restored. In reality, the coup had already begun. Every revolution begins with an idea. Absalom understood something few princes ever did. People don't always overthrow a king because they hate him. Sometimes, they simply begin believing someone else understands them better. He didn't march soldiers through the streets. He didn't storm the palace. He started with something much quieter: public opinion. Scripture tells us Absalom acquired a chariot, horses, and 50 men to run before him. It wasn't just transportation. It was theater, power, displayed before anyone had officially given it to him. Every morning, the people watched the prince arrive like a king before he ever wore a crown. Image mattered, presence mattered, perception mattered. Long before the age of television or social media, Absalom understood branding, winning hearts at the city gate. The city gate was more than an entrance. It was Israel's courthouse, his council chamber, his public square. Every grievance, every lawsuit, every complaint eventually arrived here, and every morning, so did Absalom. When someone approached, he didn't wait for them to bow. He ran toward them. He embraced them. If they attempted to honor him as royalty, he lifted them to their feet. It was humble, personal, disarming. Then came the conversation. "What town are you from? What brings you here? What injustice have you suffered?" People talked, and for perhaps the first time, they felt a prince was actually listening. Then Absalom delivered the sentence that changed everything. "Your claims are valid, but unfortunately the king has appointed no one to hear your case." A subtle accusation, never openly attacking David, never calling him corrupt, simply suggesting that the system no longer worked. Then came the promise. "If only I were appointed judge in the land, everyone would receive justice." He wasn't stealing the throne. Not yet. He was stealing something far more valuable: trust. The writer of 2 Samuel summarizes it with chilling simplicity. "So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel, not by force, but by persuasion." Years passed. Absalom waited. His popularity grew. His supporters multiplied. Then he made his move. Not with an army, with religion. He approached David respectfully. "My father, allow me to go to Hebron. I made a vow to the Lord while I was living in exile. I must fulfill it." David granted permission. Why wouldn't he? A son appearing to honor God. Pilgrimage. A sacred promise. What could be safer? But Hebron wasn't chosen by accident. It was where David himself had first been crowned king years earlier. The symbolism was unmistakable. Absalom wasn't traveling to worship. He was traveling to launch a revolution. Secret messengers spread across every tribe. Quietly, patiently, their instructions were simple. When you hear the sound of the trumpet, declare that Absalom is king. No public speeches, no grand announcement, only whispers. Whispers, powerfully enough organized, can overthrow an empire. Then came the betrayal no one expected. Among those joining Absalom was Ahithophel, David's chief counselor, his closest political advisor, the man whose wisdom was so highly regarded that Scripture compares it to receiving an answer from God. Imagine leading a global corporation, only to discover your chief strategist, your most trusted advisor, has accepted a position with your rival. That was the scale of this defection. David didn't just lose a counselor. He lost the man who knew every weakness inside his government, every military strategy, every political alliance, every secret. The conspiracy had reached the highest levels of power. The report arrived suddenly. The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom. Everything changed in an instant. David didn't argue. He didn't call for a grand military parade. He didn't lock himself inside the palace. Instead, he made one of the most extraordinary decisions of his reign. He fled. Some historians have suggested David's decision was strategic. Jerusalem was densely populated. If Absalom attacked the city, thousands of innocent people could die. David chose retreat over urban warfare. The warrior king who had faced giants now abandoned his own capital to save it. But emotionally, it looked like defeat. Barefoot through the valley. This may be one of the most haunting images in the entire Hebrew Bible. The man who once danced before the Ark of the Covenant now climbed the Mount of Olives weeping, barefoot, ashamed, broken. Behind him, his loyal followers wept. Before him, an uncertain future. It wasn't merely the loss of a throne. It was the unbearable weight of realizing his own son had succeeded, not simply in declaring himself king, but in convincing an entire nation to follow him. The palace coup was complete. The crown had not been taken by foreign invaders. It had been surrendered by the hearts of David's own people. Yet history had one final, devastating chapter left to write, because the battle for the kingdom was about to become a battle between a father and the son he still refused to hate. For the first time, David was no longer sitting on Israel's throne. Absalom was. The palace that had echoed with his father's footsteps now belonged to the son. But occupying a throne is not the same as securing a kingdom. Behind the walls of Jerusalem, a second battle had already begun. Not with swords, with information. David understood something every great leader eventually learns. Wars are often won long before armies meet. They are won by intelligence, by timing, by knowing what your enemy will do before he does. The advisor who could end the war overnight. Among Absalom's greatest weapons was not his army, it was Ahithophel. His advice carried extraordinary weight. The biblical writer says that receiving Ahithophel's counsel was regarded almost as if one had consulted God himself. That wasn't a statement about divinity. It was a reflection of his remarkable reputation for strategic wisdom. And his first recommendation could have ended the rebellion immediately. His plan was ruthless. Let me take 12,000 men. I will pursue David tonight. He is exhausted. He is vulnerable. I will strike quickly. I will kill only the king. The rest of the people will return peacefully. It was cold, efficient, strategically brilliant. One death, no prolonged civil war, no thousands of casualties, just one decisive strike. If Absalom had accepted that advice, history might have ended very differently. Earlier, while fleeing Jerusalem, David had whispered a simple prayer. Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness. It wasn't a dramatic speech. It wasn't a military strategy. It was the desperate prayer of a broken father and a desperate king. At the same time, David sent one of his loyal friends, Hushai the Archite, back into Jerusalem. His mission was extraordinarily dangerous. Pretend to support Absalom, gain his confidence, and quietly undermine Ahithophel's advice. It was one of the earliest recorded intelligence operations in ancient political history. The battle of two strategies. Ahithophel spoke first. Attack tonight. No delays. No hesitation. Then Hushai stood, calm, measured. He appealed, not to reason, but to Absalom's pride. He warned that David was too experienced, too dangerous, too clever. If your first attack fails, the people will lose confidence. Instead, he proposed something far more impressive. Gather every tribe in Israel. Build an overwhelming army. Lead it yourself. Win a glorious victory worthy of a king. It was exactly what Absalom wanted to hear. Not the fastest plan, the grandest one. The council approved Hushai's advice. Ahithophel's strategy, the strategy that might have ended the war, was rejected. Scripture offers one profound explanation. The Lord had determined to frustrate Ahithophel's good counsel, bringing Absalom's rebellion toward its appointed end. Historically, whatever one's perspective on that statement, the delay proved decisive. It gave David precious time to regroup. The end of the king's advisor. He understood strategy better than anyone. He also understood failure. When his advice was rejected, he knew Absalom's chances had dramatically diminished. He put his affairs in order. Then, according to the biblical account, he took his own life. The brilliant strategist who had abandoned David never lived to see the battle he had planned. David divided his army, one force under Joab, another under Abishai, a third under Ittai the Gittite. The old warrior wanted to fight beside them. His commanders refused. If you die, the kingdom dies with you. Reluctantly, David remained behind, but before the army marched, he gave one unforgettable command. For my sake, deal gently with the young man Absalom. Every soldier heard it. Every commander understood it. This wasn't simply the enemy. It was the king's son. The armies collided, not on open fields, but inside a vast forest. The terrain itself became deadly. Scripture says the forest claimed more lives that day than the sword. Confusion spread. Units became separated. Panic replaced formation. And somewhere among the chaos, Absalom fled. Then, everything changed. As his mule passed beneath the branches, his long hair became entangled in the limbs of a great oak. The mule continued running. Absalom was left suspended, alive, helpless, hanging between heaven and earth. It was a scene almost impossible to imagine. The prince who had reached for a crown could no longer touch the ground. One soldier found him first. He refused to strike. We all heard the king's command. Protect the young man. When Joab learned the news, he was furious. Joab had spent his life making brutal decisions others avoided. He believed mercy now would only prolong the war. Standing before the helpless prince, he made his choice. Ignoring David's explicit command, Joab drove 3 spears into Absalom. Other soldiers followed until the rebellion's leader was dead. The coup was over. The kingdom had been saved, but the victory would feel nothing like triumph. First, the king asked only one question. Is the young man Absalom safe? Not, did we win? Not, is Jerusalem secure? Only, is my son alive? When the truth reached him, the king collapsed. He climbed into the chamber above the city gate. Then came one of history's most heartbreaking cries. "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." The man who had survived lions, giants, foreign armies, political conspiracies, was finally broken by the death of the child who had tried to destroy him. Power can build kingdoms, ambition can seize them, but neither can repair a family once trust has been destroyed. Absalom believed he was correcting injustice. David believed love alone could heal deep wounds. Joab believed harsh necessity was the price of stability. Each man made choices he believed were justified. Each man left history carrying a different kind of scar. Perhaps that is why this story still resonates after nearly 3,000 years. Because it isn't only about kings. It's about families that stop speaking, leaders who postpone difficult decisions, children who mistake revenge for justice, and trusted advisors who discover that loyalty can be bought by opportunity. History often teaches us that kingdoms fall because of invading armies, but sometimes the walls remain standing, the treasury stays full, the soldiers remain loyal, and the empire still collapses because the battle began around the family table. So here's the question history leaves behind. When power and love collide, which one do human beings sacrifice first? Because when we turn to the darker page of history, we often discover that the most devastating wars are never fought between strangers. They are fought between the people who once called each other family.